and tear until it is done.
Two Juggernauts, the God of Wrath and a Vessel of Purity. Who's better? Who's harder to play? But most importantly, how do we use these guys to wipe the entire lobby? Today is part 2 of the full Juggernaut guide. I was planning on not making this video, but the demand was too high, and frankly, I'm sick of seeing people completely sell with these guys in my lobbies. I've structured this video into 2 parts per Juggernaut. First, I'll go over all the stats and how the abilities work. And then secondly is the analysis section, where I go more in depth on the Juggernaut's general playstyle, along with how to use the abilities more effectively. However, I recommend to watch the whole thing because I throw in some helpful advice in both sections, and also the stats are very important to know for the second part. With that said, let's begin. Our first Juggernaut in this video is the Prime Hellraiser, the Doomslayer. The Slayer is an extremely quick, burst DPS, short-range Juggernaut. He is 200 starting HP, along with gaining 300 HP per player, up to a maximum of 4.4k HP. He has 23 speed, and is also the only Juggernaut to have a double jump. This guy would absolutely suck in my own rating guide, as he has no leap, is extremely squishy, and has very little versatility in his kit. But after seeing what this guy can do, we don't really need that rating system anymore. In his first slot, he has his signature Super Shotgun, which shoots out 8 pellets, each doing around 18 damage for a total of 144 damage at point blank range. It also has 11 shots, specifically having 20 ammo, shooting 2 pellets per shot along with 2 in the chamber when you spawn. Keep in mind that this weapon, like a lot of shotguns, has severe damage fall, so you gotta get close to deal some real damage. Speaking of closing the gap though, the shotgun's first ability is Meat Hook, which is basically the reverse of Spear. Instead of pulling the enemy to you, you pull yourself to the enemy with a 7-second cooldown. This thing's hitbox is extremely generous, so don't let the tiny spear coming out of the gun fool you. The next ability is Glory Kill. Replicating the best part of Doom, if you shoot an enemy with the Super Shotgun and they're below 35% of their max HP and flashing orange, you can perform one of the 2 funny glory kills on the enemy, giving you iframes and also insta-killing them. Glory kills also give you an extra 35 HP along with your base 25 lifesteal, for a total of 60 HP on kill. Keep in mind that this thing does have an actual hitbox to perform it, and does not just activate if you're near the enemy. In other words, make sure you're actually facing the enemy when going for this kill. But what if our Super Shotgun runs out of ammo? Well, the second weapon is the Chainsaw. The Chainsaw does 47.5 damage on swing with a 3-second cooldown. However, this is the only weapon that can hit up to 2 times per swing, so if you're on the target the entire time, it'll do 95 damage. However, if you swing at your target and they're below 75 HP, you'll do a special kill effect where you completely separate their pelvis from their torso and splatter their blood all over the walls like a gruesome piñata. As you expect from what actual Doom looks like, this Juggernaut is extremely brutal. When you kill someone with the Chainsaw, you'll also gain 8 reserve shotgun shells, or 5 extra shots. The Chainsaw will naturally refill 1 charge every 10 seconds, however, this method will only give you a max of 1 charge. Finally, there's the Crucible. You can only get this weapon through item pickups, which we'll go over in a second. The Crucible is simple. It has a simple M1 combo with a medium hitbox, doing 200 damage per swing. It holds 3 charges like the Chainsaw, and in the same way, each kill removes 1 charge. Now, how do we get more uses out of the Crucible and Chainsaw? Well, randomly around the map, certain item pickups will spawn. You can either get this sword icon, which recharges the Crucible, the gas can, which recharges your Chainsaw, and the skull, which gives you the most broken ability ever made in Item Asylum.
I can fix that.
Ego Gear, Hale's Critical Strike, Smile, nothing even compares to this ability. Rip and Tear, marked by the menacing flaming skull, shows the true unending hatred the Doomslayer has. He enters a mode of Blind Rage, giving him 8 extra speed and making himself unable to equip any other weapons. His M1 is replaced by a Swift Grab, that if landed, will grab the enemy and immediately rip their head off. If the enemy has more than 150 HP, it will do that amount in 1 punch, and then you can just follow up with another one. Rip and Tear lasts for 25 seconds, and when it ends, you get your usual kit back. Keep in mind, this insta-kill ignores defense and invincibility weapons like Energy Drink or the Spawn Force Fields. Okay, so that's Doomslayer's kit in a nutshell. Let's learn how to play him. Firstly, Doomslayer is equipped with the second fastest jug speed for a reason. Get close to people. However, as any Juggernaut should do not hurry yourself into a mob of people and hope for the best. You are extremely squishy, and any unreciprocated melee attacks on you put you 1 step closer to your demise. Target people who are away from the crowd the most, as they will be pretty much defenseless against you. However, if you have to face a crowd, you do have a few perks at your disposal. Firstly, Doomslayer produces an insane number of iframes, or invincibility frames, because they're invulnerable during glory kills and chainsaw cuts. So if you need to kill someone in a mob, you get in there, kill them with an iframe cutscene, and get out. Your other tool for crowd control is your Crucible. Although it has a small hitbox, you're fast, and it can multi-hit and insta-kill close groups of people. But once again, still try to target mainly stragglers, as you have no AoE. Alright, let's start with how you synergize the first 2 weapons in your kit, because it'll be the meat of your gameplay and give you most of your kills. Firstly, let's discuss Meat Hook. This ability is kind of hard to land, but as I said before, the hitbox is pretty generous. You can use this ability to grapple vertically onto people, or just to get to someone faster. One tip with Meat Hook is that when you actually get to someone, don't go for a one pump directly into their mouth. Although it's extremely funny to do this, you have a pretty high chance to miss. Instead, just switch to your chainsaw and remove their right to the lower half of their body. My next tip is to always land your glory kills. This one is pretty obvious, but there's literally no downside for going for these. They give you iframes, you get more lifesteal HP, and it knocks another life off of the challengers. Chainsaw and Crucible are also pretty simple. I don't have much to say about them besides what I already stated. Chainsaw is better for single targets, but with Crucible you should try and go for multi-kills. And finally, Rip and Tear. Rip and Tear is how you get rid of those huge crowds. JPX has blessed us with the ability to give those hordes of Gooner avatars what they deserve, and you gotta use the ability accordingly. As I said earlier, this is what makes Doomslayer absolutely busted compared to other Juggernauts, and by not grabbing it when it's there, you're just wasting an entire part of this kit. Before we move on to the next Jug, there's one last thing I have to mention. Never, and I mean never, play this guy on Crossroads and Critical Strike. You will lose almost every time. I don't even know why they're still in the map pool. As I mentioned in this video, they don't really fit any Juggernaut besides maybe Red Mist. So if you're unlucky enough to get either of these maps, avoid Doom and opt for Red Mist or Beta Figure instead. Our second Juggernaut is the Pale King's greatest knight, the Pure Vessel. Vessel is an extremely mobile, high DPS Juggernaut that thrives by synergizing his diverse kit to take anyone and anything down. He has a phenomenal speed of 25, along with having the highest jump power at 70. He has 250 base HP, with an extra 375 for every player, having a max of 5.5k HP. He is equipped with a very large pool of abilities, some better and some worse. Let's do a quick stat rundown. His first weapon is Soul, which is basically anything to do with the weapon you're holding, which we'll refer to as the Nail. You have a 3-swing M1 combo, doing 21 damage per hit with a pretty long but narrow hitbox. When used, it is a 2-second cooldown. It's a pretty simple weapon, but it'll be your primary method of chewing through enemies. Most of your other abilities are really just to soften up the enemies to get to that 75 HP threshold. Your first ability is Soul Pillars. You'll jump high and spread a large number of pillars in all 4 cardinal directions, doing 35 damage per hit with a 10-second cooldown. Keep in mind, this ability will rarely multi-hit, as each pillar has its own hitbox, so you'll sometimes see this ability doing 70 HP instead of 35. I'm pretty sure you have iframes during this ability too, but you accelerate pretty fast, so you won't get damaged much anyway. Your next ability is Soul Daggers. I'm warning you, this ability is very situational and will kill you if you don't know how to use it correctly. Upon use, Soul Daggers will shoot out rapid bursts of AoE upon the enemy. You can aim this ability, and it will also progressively shoot the daggers further and further away from you as the ability progresses. On the bright side, this ability only has a 6-second cooldown. We'll go over specifics shortly, but for now, let's move on to his second weapon, Purity. Think of Purity as the vessel's tenderizer. It's all the abilities that soften up the enemy for further pursuit. Your first ability is Focus. If you've played against any vessel, you know that this ability is very annoying and quite good. Using Focus upon use will try to target any players that you are directly facing in a very large area. It will then shoot out multiple bursts around the player, with the first one doing 30 damage and the rest doing 10, with all damage dealt applying hit stun. This ability has a 15-second cooldown. His next ability is Roar. Upon use, you scream, ragdolling everyone around you and applying 1 curse stack, or doing 20% more damage. There's only like one use I can think of for this ability, and it's to get high DPS melee targets off you in a secluded area like Townie. Oh, and also his M1 is a parry, which is the only Jug to have one, but we'll go over that later. Your final ability is Shade. Your M1 is very useful. Upon use, you do a controlled dash with your nail, doing 35 damage. This is a really good way to finish people off, or just to close the gap between someone. Okay, stats over. Let's really learn how to be the purest vessel. I think a lot of people haven't realized that the skill-based Juggernaut with a huge learning curve that everyone has been wanting is Vessel. Vessel is basically what Filibuster wishes he was. A Juggernaut that when put in the hands of a novice will be terrible, but when put in the hands of a master will be an absolute bloodbath. So how do we get to that point? Well, before we dissect the abilities, Vessel probably has the most unique playstyle out of all the Juggernauts, which is why a lot of people don't use him right. His squishiness makes him very vulnerable to huge crowds, however, most of his abilities thrive in said crowds. It's a delicate balance between getting a large amount of value out of your abilities and also not leaving yourself exposed for too long. Now, everything that I describe in the second section has to be done at breakneck speeds to be effective, similar to Beta Figure. But no matter what, the first thing we have to know is how squishy you really are. The first thing I neglected to mention in the first section was that each ability gives you a certain amount of defense. This will be important when dissecting the abilities. The M1s are pretty straightforward. As I said, it will be the primary method of killing throughout your game. Starting with Soul Daggers. The problem with this ability is it leaves you vulnerable for so long, and it only gives you an abysmal 10% defense upon use. This ability should only be used in big crowds that can't output too much damage on you. Well, how do we get them like that? To start, you can combo it with Soul Pillars in order to ragdoll them, and then use Soul Daggers to get that extra AoE to wipe most of them out. Another thing you can do is combo this ability with Focus. If you go behind a wall, focus the large group of enemies, and then immediately follow it up with daggers, they'll be too distracted by your focus that they can't take advantage of your vulnerability. If they're still alive, you can use Void Tendrils and then Shades M1 to follow it up. Let's go over Soul Pillars next. Don't just use this ability because you can, because it's pretty mid unless comboed with something else. As I stated earlier, Soul Daggers, Void Tendrils, and Shades M1 all have good synergy with each other. But another thing that helps you combat crowds is Purity's M1, or Vessel's Parry. First off, parrying range items is quite weird. You won't reflect any of the damage, but if you're close enough, you will follow up with the subsequent 65 damage slash. However, if you get hit by a melee, you will block the damage and follow up with the 65 damage slash. Another cool thing about the parry is that if you succeed, you only have a 1-second cooldown before you can do it again. So if you landed one in a mob of people, you can follow it up with another one relatively quickly for a lot more DPS. However, if you fail, you'll have to wait another 5 seconds before trying again, and in general, it leaves you really vulnerable to attacks. As I stated earlier, Focus synergizes well with a lot of things, but keep in mind that you only get 35% defense while using the ability, so try to hide behind cover before popping it. You can also just run away and spam Focus, but if you do this, everyone in the lobby will hate you, and you'll probably get targeted for the next 3 matches. And finally, Roar. As I said, this ability doesn't really have many good uses. Although it gives you 75% defense while in use, all it does is ragdoll the enemy and apply 1 curse stack. You could use it to push people off ledges, but once again, this is really niche. Overall, playing Vessel is basically blending every single Juggernaut's playstyle into one. You take the Red Mist's aggressiveness, Beta Figure's move spamming, Filibuster's single target priority, and Doomslayer's health management, and you put it all together in one extremely hard to master Juggernaut. And with that, that's the comprehensive guide on the 2 newest Juggernauts. I'm sure I might have missed something, so if you have some advice to share on these jugs, put it in the comments. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe as it helps me a lot. But with that said, have a good day, and I'll hopefully see you soon.